Hey, folks, how are you? Welcome to the Pop Culture SquadCast. It is Tuesday night, and we're here. Well, I'm here. We're Mike's not going to be with us tonight, so I'm flying solo. Uh, please comment if you have any questions or if you want to get to stuff. There's some stuff we're going to get to. We have a couple of guests. Ethan Sachs is going to be joining us shortly, along with his daughter Naomi Sachs, who they co-wrote a book called Haunted Girl in 2023. It is currently funding a collected edition with some interesting benefits to that collected edition. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk to Ethan fairly soon. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here every Tuesday night. We're going to try and keep doing it. We don't quite have a guest lined up next week, but we will be here. We have some guests lined up for later in June, and I have a couple of options on next week as well. But we're going to be here. One of the things that we do at the SquadCast is we try to be there for our listeners. Hopefully you guys are interested in what we have to say. I know I have a good time, and we try to keep it light. We try to keep it entertaining. We try to keep everybody up to date on what's going on in the world of comics. One of the things that happened in the world of comics, unfortunately, these days is, some people don't make it. Some people have lived a life, and that life passes by. We had a huge loss in the community over the weekend, and as much as I am personally disappointed with the fact, not disappointed with, but disappointed in the fact that Mike is not able to be here because he's not feeling well, and I feel badly for him. Professionally, I'm disappointed as well because I would have liked for him to have the opportunity to talk about the person who passed away, and we're going to talk about him now. We're going to talk about Peter David. Peter David was one of the most prolific comic book writers of the last few decades. He really started to write professionally in comics in the late 80s and through the mid 20 teens into the late 20 teens, and even into the 22. He did some stuff recently over the last couple of years when he was healthy enough with Marvel. Peter was a very good writer. He was most prolific at a time when I wasn't reading comics, but he filled that era with good stories. He was a great storyteller. There are people who are friends of mine who, credit Peter David as, one of the founding principles in their comic book, ethos of what they are and who they are. I met Peter once. It was at a show, and I want to share that. It was at Awesome Con in Washington, D.C. I had a collected edition of X Factor, the copy that's in this picture here from the Jamie Madrox days when he was leading the team, and I had it in my hand, and I was walking by, and I wasn't sure if that was Peter or not. When you're a fan, you don't necessarily know what people look like. I wasn't sure if it was him or not, and I wasn't sure what to do. And he kind of said, "Hey, do you have something for me to sign?" Because he saw me holding the X Factor book, and I said, "Yes." I said, and he was very kind. I told him how much I really appreciated the work, and it was a very pleasant conversation. I would hope that everyone had that similar experience with Peter. I know at times he may have been difficult. He was a very principled person, and he believed in what he believed in, and was at times uncompromising. There's plenty of stuff out there to be read about. Go to his Wikipedia page. It's fairly complete. but there's so many good comics that he wrote, so many important things that he was part of over the last few decades, and over the last almost decade, he has been struggling with health issues. Gonna, you know, Mike is not here tonight, but the other day when Peter passed, he texted me and said, he said, if you haven't heard, Peter David died. And I said, oh, it was old man. I said I was very sad, but unsurprised. He's been struggling. Those who follow have been keeping up to date with his wife, and we feel badly for his family. And when Mike said, yeah, a couple of years ago, he started thinking quietly that he had suffered enough, but he hung in there, and he did. It was a tough time for Peter. Um, I'm going to take the moment to just say, thank you to him. Read a comic that he wrote. Um, he he can't tell the story of comics without Peter David and his contributions. So that's something we need to remember. Um, Similarly, I believe on the same day, Todd Smith passed away. Todd Smith was T.O.D. Smith, was a comic book artist. I remember seeing his stuff on Omega Men. Ironically, the first Action Comics story, which I believe is the first DC comic story that Peter David ever wrote, was drawn by Todd Smith, and he was a great artist and well liked and well revered, and our condolences to his family and friends as well. Um, thanks everybody for being here again. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow us if you're not yet. We're going to have our guests very shortly. In the meantime, though, I do want to take advantage of the fact that there's some stuff that we talk about on this show. And one of the things we talk about on this show are Kickstarters or crowdfunding things. And we want to keep highlighting that. So there's a Kickstarter that we talked about a while ago. It's called Comics Courier, and it is I don't know what's happening here. Yeah. So Comics Courier is ending in a couple of days. So if you haven't gotten there and you haven't backed that, please do. It is a book about, or a newspaper actually, about sharing comic book criticism and finding ways to do things that are smart and intelligent about comic books. We love that, and we're very excited to have that going on. Other news that we're going to talk about really quickly, because our guests are coming in. We're going to get to them very shortly. Ethan Sachs and his daughter Naomi are going to be here, so that's great. In the meantime, though, there is news. There is comics news. We want to something popped today. It has been kind of out there in the world for a little bit, but we found out about today, and I'm going to share it with everyone as soon as I find that picture. At Comics Pro, there was news that DC and Marvel were going to do something weird and work together. Well, today we got the news that Deadpool and Batman are going to be in comics together. In September, there is going to be a one-shot that is written by Zeb Wells and Greg Capullo, with art by Greg Capullo. That's a great team. This is an interesting combination. It's probably makes all the sense for all the marketing reasons in the world. Deadpool and Batman together sounds good. Sounds like it can be fun. We're looking forward to it. Subsequently, in November, there is going to be a Grant Morrison written, Dan Mora art one shot by DC. So it's going to be Marvel with their version in a one shot, and then Grant Morrison, and then DC with their version in a different one shot. So that's the plan of what's going to happen. Sounds interesting. I mean, this is all fun and games, and it's not going to be serious, and it doesn't really matter in the long term. But it's going to be fun to see stories told and stories illustrated by these great creators. We'll get more about that. There's some more stuff. I'm sure when Mike comes back, we'll dive into what this is, especially if we get more information about the other characters and the other creative teams that are going to be part of this weird mashing crossover that we never thought we would get again, but we are getting. So stay aware of that, and we'll see how it goes. In the meantime, I hope I've been okay here by myself. I really rely on Mike a lot, and he's a great co-host. But in the meantime, we're going to bring in our guests. We have a lot to talk about with them. They have their crowdfunding campaign going on. There's still plenty of time to get involved in that. We're going to talk about that. But we are going to bring in our guests, Ethan Sachs and his daughter, Naomi, both excellent writers. Hey, how are you? Welcome to the show, Ethan and Naomi.
Thanks for having us.
Very excited to be here.
I am so thrilled that you are here. I've told you this before, Ethan. I love A Haunted Girl, and I'm happy to tell you, Naomi, I love this story. I've loved it from the first issue. I think that's the first time we met in person. Ethan and I came to the signing at Third Eye when issue 1 had come out, and I talked about this book to people over as it was coming out. I tried to get people to read it as much as I could because I think it's a great story. It has very interesting themes, and right now there is a crowdfunding campaign for the exclusive extended edition. Before we get into what Haunted Girl is about, what's in the extended edition for people who haven't?
So besides the the 4 original issues that are in the trade and the resource guides that came from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the American Psychiatric Association, the concept art and the cover gallery that's all in the original trade paperback, we got permission to include People Magazine ran like a 6-page profile on us, and we got to include that. We got to include Marco Lorenzana, the artist and other co-creator, did a how to draw the main character. We're going to be putting in excerpts from the script, layouts, finished art, so people can see sort of the progression, and working on maybe a couple of other mental health related features as well. So it's going to be pretty jam-packed, much longer or deeper than we were able to go in the first trade paperback. And most importantly, a percentage of the proceeds is going to go to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, like just a thank you for all the great work they do, and also they did for our book too. Like they did sensitivity reading, they contributed guides, so it's our chance to give back a little. So yeah, and we're going to use, or I'm going to use my part of whatever is earned to fund some art for the sequel. I'm sorry about that background noise. My cat is doing something.
That's okay. I had to get ours out of here just at the last minute. No,
Yeah,
I understand. No worries. And
apologies.
usually cats show up on this show all the time. It's not a problem.
Little chaos. But yeah, so it's a lot of besides the extras, the main thing for us is really the donation.
That's awesome. I agree. If you are watching this now or later, go to the comments section. There is a link to the Zoop crowdfunding campaign there. Go ahead and click on it, get behind it. I've already pledged, so please do that. Um, Naomi, what is a haunted girl about for you?
Well, A Haunted Girl, I guess, follows our protagonist, 16-year-old Cleo, and she was recently hospitalized for depression and suicidality. And as she is released from her hospitalization and reintegrating into school, she has to struggle with like reintegrating back into like her school life. But then there's also supernatural forces at play at the same time. So she has to deal with all sorts of like supernatural horrors as well as like day-to-day horrors of just like trying to get through life and dealing with mental illness.
What what brought how did this collaboration between the two of you come together? Like what was it something that how did that happen for you guys?
So back in the spring of 2019, my daughter was a high school freshman. I was actually working on Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at the time, and Naomi had a mental health crisis that led to being hospitalized. And we missed, as parents, myself in particular, like missed a lot of warning signs. Just didn't fully understand what was happening at that point. But while she was in the hospital, I was working out of the hospital cafeteria and trying desperately to not be distracted and like do some work. But I kind of decided then and there that I wanted to do a story that would inspire Naomi and maybe other teenagers going through similar struggles with depression and suicidality to like basically want to live, to seek help, to feel seen. Sort of, I didn't really have a fully formed idea per se. I wrote one line in a notebook, which was the fate of all life on Earth rests with a girl who doesn't know if she wants to live. And I thought it was going to be an alien invasion story at first. Went through many iterations. I contacted Mark Lorenzana, and we started working on a pitch. It took so many years to get this thing off the ground. We're close to a deal in March of 2020 when the world sort of stopped. Lost out on that chance, and so because it took so long to sort of get it up and running, parallel to that, Naomi was getting to be in a better place with like therapy, medication, personal growth, all of the above. And so I started to think like, what if she co-wrote it with me? Like, number one, there would be an authenticity that I just couldn't provide, and number two,
Sure.
maybe it would be cathartic for her. So I asked her, and right around the time that we got our offer from Syzygy, Chris Ryle's great imprint for Image Comics, and so the timing was perfect, and it is so much better than it would have been if she didn't join.
Um I think that's great. It's this. It's first as I've said before, and I will probably say several times again. I love this book. I love the story. I love the characters that are developed. I love this the emotion that it brings out. Um, Before I get to that though, Joe's here and he wants to say hi, and so we're gonna say hi to Joe. Um,
Hi, Joe.
um, in the meantime, Naomi, what's it like working with your dad in his profession? How was that for you in
It
terms of
was
what was he a pain in the ass? Did you tell him to stop, shut up, and
I'm not going to lie, we are both very like headstrong people, and I think I consider myself a writer. I don't This was my first foray into the comic world, but I do enjoy writing in general. Um, and so I was a bit concerned at the start that we would butt heads a lot.
Mhm.
But surprisingly, we did not. And like any small disagreements we had, we were able to like sort through them pretty quickly. I was like a bit nervous at first that like my dad might like, I don't know, kind of be like coming from a place of like more experience, maybe want to like, I guess, control the project like more strongly kind of thing. And I would have been okay with like taking more of a backseat role kind of thing. But honestly, I was like really pleasantly surprised with like how much he like listened and how much it really did feel like, you know, like a real team effort, like we were both equal players. And even if things weren't like the conventional comic way, he would still like hear me out. And a lot of times, maybe things can't wouldn't go like exactly the way either of us planned. There were a lot of compromises, but I think pretty much everything we compromised on made the story better and stronger and more cohesive. And overall, I thought it was a really nice and rewarding process.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. This is a question that I also had, but Sherry has. What do you think the age range, maturity level of people who should read this book is?
I mean, I think you can kind of see it. I mean, first of all, there is subject matter that is potentially triggering. That said, like we worked with sensitivity readers, professionals, the American Psychiatric Association, the AFSP as well, and so I think it's fairly tight, in the sense that it isn't too triggering. Um, but that said, I think like no earlier than tween, and certainly above that is our
Yeah,
audience. I think like a PG-13 horror movie, if you think about it, like
sure, I
maybe
agree.
12 and
I'll
up
give you
kind of.
that.
Yeah, I think that is kind of a safe, and certainly adults can read it. I think this subject matter is really not just confined, obviously, to teenagers. So, like, people who are older can read. When we were writing it, we were thinking a lot about high school and college students, I think, as the sort of primary. But I do think it's not graphic. We
No,
we opted for ghosts as the supernatural thing. It's not outrageously like violent or anything like that. It's more of a creepy scare, which is my favorite horror movies. I'm a big horror movie fan, and I really do believe horror movies and horror literature and horror comics can provide the sort of catharsis, um, and tackle some issues that maybe it's hard to tackle directly, I guess.
mhm.
So I think it's certainly maybe 13 and up is a safe range. I certainly wouldn't go too much younger than that, or 12 and up maybe.
Can we? We're gonna go down. Keep going down. We'll figure it out. But
Yeah.
we got the point. My question is this: the East Asian, Far Asian aspects of mythology or supernaturalism. Whose idea was that? How did you? What type of research did you guys do for that for this story?
So originally it was my idea before Naomi joined, just because Naomi is half Japanese, and Cleo, like Naomi, is half Japanese, and Naomi is very in touch with that part of her, and so I wanted the original character, which has evolved much since Naomi took over the reins of writing her, that it be recognizable to Naomi, but not be like a one for one translation. So like Naomi was a figure skater and injured her knee. Cleo was a martial arts person, like injured her knee. So there was some like resonance, but it wasn't like a direct one to one. But that was sort of one of the reasons. And like frankly, like Marco and I are both horror fans, and so Marco loves Japanese horror movies. So there was also a component of the visual.
Mhm.
Um, if you're going to tell a ghost story, there's just some incredible history there. So, I did a lot of research into yokai, and I have a friend, Zach Davison, who has written a number of books. I
Yes,
definitely
we
leaned
love
into
Zach.
his books. Yeah. And so, plus watched a lot of movies, and also Naomi and I watched a lot of horror movies together to this was sort of my I really wanted to think about pacing, and like what we were looking for is like more of a sort of slow build and that kind of creepiness. And so movies, like one of our favorites was like Barbarian from a few years ago, which isn't necessarily the same genre per se, but it had that really great structure to it. I showed her The Exorcist. I showed her a number of classic horror movies.
What was that like for you, Naomi? Like in terms of exposing yourself to that type of genre? Was it something you embraced? Is that something you like to play in general, or?
I'll be so honest, I wasn't super huge into horror until fairly recently.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not still not like super duper huge into it, but I kind of like really avoided it strongly until fairly recently. And I will say, I am easily scared. So, but I will say that I did enjoy watching these movies a lot. And I mean, the only one that like really scared me really, really badly was Barbarian.
Mhm.
Um, Truly at no point in that movie did I have any clue what was going to happen, and like the sense of like that unlocked some sort of primal fear in me. But the others, I will say, like I was able to watch like more calmly and still like, get scared at the right moments and stuff, but I was able to like appreciate the storyline without getting like as spooked as I was expecting to. And I think that it was interesting to like tease apart, like, I don't know, whenever my dad and I watch anything for research, my dad will at the end like, you know, what did you like? What didn't you like? What can we take? What can we what do we want to avoid? Maybe that's less of a thing that comes up, but mostly like what do we want to take from this?
Mhm.
And, things like Barbarian, perhaps less directly applicable, um, to a haunted girl at least. Can still be like general, like writing things that you like to take away from things, but just a lot of, and I mean, a lot of like a haunted girl, like was very much so inspired by various other works of like pop culture. Like the aesthetics is very much inspired by like, Japanese horror movies like The Grudge, and but like a lot of like, we lean into certain tropes, like chosen one trope kind of thing, you know, and sorry, but so much of a haunted girl comes from media that we've grown up with, that we've loved, and so, you know,
Yeah,
nothing exists in a vacuum.
absolutely. It is what makes Haunted Girl very interesting is because I think some of the things that you did pull from are not traditional, not as overused as the things as some other things, right? It makes it a little fresh, a little new. I liked it. I like the 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 lore and mythology behind the antagonists. Um, you said there is a sequel in mind. Is there something else coming?
Yeah, I mean we're at the very early stages. Got a long way to go before it's ready for prime time, but can tease a little bit of where we're thinking of, where we're going to go. It's set 8 years later.
Hmm.
Cleo is, or actually, Naomi, do you want to do the honors of talking about this? I definitely don't want to monopolize the.
Sure. Well, Cleo is now working as a resident in like the hospital that she was hospitalized in. And so it's going to be more so focused on the hospitalization aspects, because that's something that we briefly mentioned in the first one, but it's not something we got to talk about as much. And it's going to be more of an ensemble thing. My dad describes, I guess, Cleo as more of like a Yoda figure, um, but like more of a mentor figure. She's not like the main character. And so, but there's going to be a new cast of like teenagers and stuff actually in the hospital. And that allows us to do a few things that we like didn't do um, in the first one. Like we get to explore hospitalization, and we also get to look at, various different like mental health diagnoses and like the kinds of people that you would see in a hospital. And so I'm definitely very excited about that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, besides the fact that, Ethan Sachs is using Star Wars metaphors, I don't know where that comes from, but there's some parts, especially early in the first couple of issues, where Naomi is her recent experiences really come up on her, and uh, as you guys were putting that together and writing those scenes, how did you work through that process?
Well, like Naomi, why don't you actually feel this? Because I feel like
I really want to hear your perspective. I'm so
yeah.
glad you joined us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was definitely difficult at times. I would say the way that I guess like I approached Cleo as a character, a lot of Cleo like sort of like I don't know, characteristics of Cleo were kind of preset a bit before I joined. Things like, she's half Japanese, her martial arts background, things like that were preset. And then I guess obviously because it's like the original idea came like I guess from my own experience, like our trajectories I guess are kind of similar. So I guess I had to like deal with like the question of like how similar do I want Cleo to be to me? And
Hmm.
because I want her experiences to be grounded in my reality, but I also like want her to be her own character. And so I think that I feel like I really like rooted our struggles together, perhaps in slightly different scenarios, but like our struggles, our feelings, those were really rooted together. And then I tried to develop her personality like outside and like differently from me, like in her like happier moments, but like most of her personality I tried to make a bit different. But that means that like, for a lot of like the really personal scenes, for a lot of the struggling scenes, that comes like from like pretty much mining my own experiences. And that was a little bit emotionally intense at times. There were definitely times where I was kind of like a bit overwhelmed with like the intensity with which, because like at this point, when I was writing it, the like hospitalization, like the first time around, that was a few years ago, so it wasn't like fresh on my mind. And so I guess I had like assumed that it would be pretty calm, but then I when actually writing it, like the emotions and everything kind of came back full force, with a bit of an intensity that I wasn't expecting. And so I definitely did need to like take breaks and step away sometimes, get some fresh air. Um, but I will say that I do think that like with the distance, I guess, there are certain like advantages too for like writing. Because I think at the time everything was also new to me and I didn't maybe always have the best like vocabulary to express how I was feeling. And so it was like felt like there was this really strong like communication barrier between me and my parents and me and everyone for that matter. And I think that like, with time and like, with therapy and things like that, I think I have more emotional intelligence and more of a vocabulary to express my feelings. And even without like, fancy, like, even without like a super duper like difficult vocabulary or anything, just the ability to express like the emotions that I didn't know how to at the time was kind of
Mm.
cathartic and rewarding.
Yeah, and you did an excellent job of it. I mean, it's any writer knows that sometimes things get too close, and being able to get through that and not walk away and put it down and never come back to it is a great victory. You know, um, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that now, and thank you for sharing in the book. Um, on a lighter note, Joe from Queens is checking in, and he wants to know, Naomi, what is the worst? Let's focus on the worst part of co-writing with your dad. And he also wants to know, is it true there's a new Eisner's category inspired Best Father Doris series? Thank you, Joe, for participating. So what was the worst part of it? Let's put him on the spot. Come on.
Ooh, where to begin?
Oh.
No.
How long is the podcast? Like, you never have tape to.
No, but I will say, this perhaps is more of a thing with like the sequel writing, which is going on right now,
Mhm.
than like the original. Because the first time around we did have deadlines, so my dad was like pushy on deadlines, and that made sense because we had deadlines. Now we don't currently have deadlines, and my dad is still like, "Are you working on a haunted girl? Have you been working on a haunted girl?" So I guess that at times can be a bit much when I don't want to
As a father, I
at
have
that
no
moment in
idea what
time.
he's talking about at all.
But other than that, I will say that it's been a pretty good experience overall, and don't have much complaints when it comes to the actual writing part.
That's awesome. That's
It should
great.
be noted, by the way, that Joe is a chaos agent.
Well, I understand. I'm well aware of that. I'm well aware of who he is. Okay. He's a wonderful man and chaos agent as well.
He is a wonderful chaos agent.
So I want to I want to talk. I got a question for Ethan. I'm curious about this, and I'd like to have your perspective on this, Naomi. You grew up, went to college, had a career for 20 years, and decided to change that. Why did you do that?
Well, it sounds like it was more of a like smart strategy decision that
I didn't say it was smart.
than
I'm just
actually
saying it happened.
I stumbled into it. My friend Joe Casada is directly responsible for, and Joe Casada is somebody who I've known for almost all of those 20 years that I was in journalism.
Okay.
My first cover story for the entertainment section of the New York Daily News was in 2001 or two. It was about the hot young guns who are saving Marvel from bankruptcy, editor-in-chief Joe Quesada and publisher Bill Jemas. And they were called Young Guns. So like, how long ago.
Well, I understand.
Yeah, that story was. So that's where I met him. And then he was a source, and then he became a friend, and I've known him for now decades. And
you did the cover of the Haunted Girl, so
he did. He gave that to us as a gift because he believed in the mission, and that guy has so many things going on that for him to sit down and do it was an incredible. Hey Dean, I saw a message pop up. Basically what happened was I was not thinking. I was kind of miserable at my newspaper job because newspapers were dying and mine was dying faster than most. And every year there would be layoffs, and I would see mentors of mine go, and I knew one day it's going to be me. And in 2016, I interviewed Paul Blake, an actor played Greedo, and we were talking about who shot first. And he was just so funny. He was talking about how myopic Greedo was with those eyes, and how that's why he couldn't hit. But he did say in the script, it says Han shoots alien, and so. I kept thinking I couldn't get the story out of my head, this idea out of my head, that it'd be funny to do the murder investigation in Greedo, but play it like Rashomon. And for those of you out there to know Rashomon is, well, it's based on a novel, but it's this classic Kurosawa movie about a murder in feudal Japan. And each witness, including the ghost of the victim, has a vastly different story. So I thought it'd be very funny to frame it like that. I just couldn't get out of my head. Went to a Mets game with Joe, and I was like, so I have this idea. Like, do you mind if I send in a spec script? And he was not editor in chief at this point. He was chief creative officer. Right. And so he was like, sure, whatever. Not enthusiastic. But I never wrote a comic book script before. I ended up contacting someone at Lucasfilm because I'd been a movie reporter and editor, so I had those contacts, and so they put me in touch with Pablo Hidalgo and Story Group, and basically to see what I could and couldn't do. And I reverse engineered the scripts that I loved from other comics, like how they were formatted, how they were paced. And then I cobbled it together and sent it into Joe. Didn't hear anything for weeks. And then we go to Japan. Plane lands on September 7th, 2016. I get the email that changes my life, but the subject line is F. Greedo. So I thought, wow, he really hated it. But it was like, the gist of it was, never mind, Greedo. I think you could actually do this for a living. And that was the first domino. He put me in touch with Axel Alonso, who was then editor-in-chief. And he really loved it. It was ultimately not published. Lucasfilm rejected it, but it got my foot in the door at Marvel. And then at the same time, the newspaper was offering buyouts, and I'd been there 20 years. So it was like 7 months pay. So if I was going to make a career change, like that was the moment. And so I kind of felt like everything was aligning. And my first big break was Old Man Hawkeye. And I still don't know why editor Mark Basso took a chance on me, but he did, to give like a complete neophyte a 12-issue miniseries of that scale.
Sure.
So it really
How
is
did you approach that?
Well, I didn't know what I didn't know, which was probably helpful. So it was like one of those things where I think several writers were applying, and I knew like he was going on vacation. So I pulled all these all-nighters to get it to him before he left on vacation, because he was like, "Oh, don't worry about it, I'll come back." But I wanted him to get, because I figured he'd be reading it like on the plane, whatever, you know what I mean? Like I'd get that first shot at it. And like my pitch was basically, because I was a big fan of, Hawkeye and the Thunderbolts, that era of Thunderbolts. And so I was wondering like, oh, when the Red Skull and the villains kind of pulled their trap, where would the Thunderbolts have been on that line? And maybe what if they were the ones who tipped to battle? And that is like a source of guilt for Hawkeye. And so like, as he's losing his vision, to go on that revenge mission, and like, then you have, it's almost like a video game where you have levels that you go until the big boss or whatever. And so that was sort of my pitch. And also like I channeled a lot of parenthood in it, like his whole relationship with his estranged daughter. I was like, I'm gonna put all my insecurities as a parent into that relationship. So yeah, so it's like I didn't necessarily, like, I wasn't scared, or I didn't hold back, because I just didn't I didn't know how the whole pitching process worked. So I think that worked in my favor.
So I'm gonna, since Naomi's here, I want to take her advantage. What was it like for you? I mean, at that moment, obviously you had your own life you were living, but your dad is going through this massive career change. Is that how was that for you?
I mean, I guess in the home, like for the last like 2 years maybe of like my dad's like career at the Daily News, I could like definitely like feel like the tension and like the stress like from work. And like I also remember like when my dad was reading the email, like at the airport on his phone, I could feel like an excitement, and that was definitely new. And it was definitely like not 100% certain at the start.
Sure.
But it was like great, I think, to just like watch like my dad become more and more confident and happy and get that energy back. It's definitely a very like noticeable change, like how much like I guess like happier and like brighter he's become. And obviously there are still like rough patches sometimes in terms of like comics, like dry spells, I guess. um but overall he seems like much happier. And I guess like I think he adapts really well to like the changes too. And perhaps that's like partly like a freelance thing, but like it's like a thing, like if he lost his job at the Daily News, like what would he do? And that's a full-time job. But like now it's like if like comics are coming in slow, he might like do something like not comic related, like he seems to like always know how to like, I don't know, balance things out, which is pretty cool.
Cool. That's very cool. Um Chaos has another question. We're going to get to that in a second. But Naomi, did you read comics before your dad started working on them, or did you read your dad's comics? Did you read comics before you became a comic book writer?
I've been reading comics since I was a little kid. I think that like comes with, like my dad, like there were just comics in the house. Um, like I don't know, when I was like 4 or 5, I was like reading the little like kitty comics, and one of like groups that I really enjoyed was Power Pack. Um,
Okay.
that was definitely one I enjoyed a lot. And not just like superhero stuff. There was I still read like a lot of like Simpsons comics because where
Yeah, sure.
we used to watch The Simpsons a lot as a household, and I don't know, had a few Muppet comic books. But all sorts. And I do think that I maybe slowed down a bit on the comic front, maybe like towards middle school. But I think as like my dad like got deeper into comics, like, he would definitely like pass me like certain comic books, like, that he that he was like reading, be like, oh, this is like a friend, which is like really cool. And a lot of times I would like meet these people too, because the comics community is really like sweet. And so, but I would definitely say that I'm like back to like reading more stuff and a lot of like graphic novels and stuff too. And I really enjoy the medium. I think it's a beautiful medium, and I would definitely love to work with it more.
That's awesome. So, Ethan, what did you read growing up? Were you a huge avid comics reader, or
I
did you?
was, yeah. Well, so I'm old enough, I probably shouldn't out myself, but I was born in the 70s. And so um, I learned how to read with Flash comic books that were like reprints of John Broome stories. And then
Sure.
Star Wars hits. I was really into Star Wars. I was into Micronauts. Then I get into X-Men. And as I'm getting older, simultaneously, you hit that golden age of the 80s in comic books when I'm ready for the more mature comics. You get
Right.
I was really into like Alien Legion, become friends with Carl Potts recently, and so it's been incredible to hear the behind the scenes stories on that.
I saw the picture from last week. Very
Yeah,
nice.
and
Very nice luncheon.
of course, all the big ones: Watchmen, X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills, and it just
Right.
I really loved that era. And then, getting into high school, it dropped off a bit, and then I came back towards the end of college. And I actually found, like, when I got to the Daily News, not that long after, I found out, I was kind of an aspiring reporter, and I was hired first at a editorial position on the website very early on, like literally when the website was first being launched in 1996. And but I found like nobody cared about comic books or sci-fi or horror or any of that. And so I would keep pitching the editors, and finally they started letting me do stories. And then I became, basically for 20 years, the de facto sort of geek beat, and everything from like Game of Thrones and Walking Dead and Star Wars and to comic books and lesser extent video games and things like that. So I just kind of stumbled onto this niche of like things I loved, largely because it was looked down on by most of the feature section, to be honest. Like that was
Sure.
the elevated stuff.
Sure. Absolutely. So we have this comment here. If you two could tackle any big two or established property together, who would it be? Signed, Chaos and Queens.
Well, there's something that we have out that hopefully gets approved.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can't really say anything.
That's fine then.
But you
Listen,
can kind of put
Joe, you're gonna have to wait.
based on the type of stuff I write often. But the thing is, my lips are sealed, so I would never divulge that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see any lips at all.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's the thing, because I'm very good with secrecy, and
Sure. So
I
Ethan,
certainly
how was
will
your
not.
trip to Japan? Did you have a good time over there?
I had a great time. Yeah, it was. I mean, Star Wars Celebration. It's my favorite convention.
Sure.
Um, Also, unfortunately, Naomi was in the middle of finals, but my wife and I went and hung out with my wife's family. But also, it was the 30th anniversary of my dad's death. My dad died in Tokyo on April 19th, 1995. I was teaching English in Japan, and he came to visit me and had an aneurysm. And but 30 years to the day, I was back in Tokyo, and so it was very moving. Like, I had an interview on the live, like this live stage that they have there, and so I was able
Yeah.
to talk about my father, who was the one who introduced me to Star Wars. And I went to the hospital where he died just to be there on the day, and I'm not religious, but went to a synagogue just to kind of say a mourner's prayer, just because I felt like I should. So it was like very moving to be there on that day. And of course, Star Wars, like Celebration, is completely over the top and wonderful.
Sure. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's no information was shared there at all.
No information, none.
When you started writing comics, you said, like, this is the thing I think I can do, and Joe said you can do it, and then you start off with this um Old Man Hawkeye did Old Man, but then you jump right into Star Wars comics. Like, was that something that you thought you wanted to do? Was that like where you wanted to be? I mean, like, obviously the Greedo thing was kind of your first thing. Was that, do you think like this is where I want to go?
I mean, I didn't have a coherent plan of any kind, and I was just happy and lucky to have, fallen into it. And like, meanwhile, by the way, the less glamorous part of the comic book industry is, because it's freelance and
Yeah,
because
it's hard.
financially it's not, retirement money. Like, I had to do stuff on the side. Like, I worked for NBC News for, I don't know, 6 years or so.
We hold on to that one. We're going to talk about that
Okay,
in a
yeah.
second.
So I wasn't like I was thinking, here's my career plan and I'm going to go into Star Wars or something. Thomas Groneman, who was the assistant editor at the time in the Star Wars office, was given his first like sort of main editorial opportunity with a Silver Surfer annual, and I guess he liked Old Man Hawkeye, and so he tapped me for that, and it was just, we were just like worked really well together. So he brought me into the Star Wars office, and I started with like a 8-page Mace Windu story, and then went on to Galaxy's Edge, which was basically like,
I got it right. It came out in the right order
you got
in
the
the video.
order of everything completely right. I was like blown away. Yeah, so like that was my first Star Wars, like my first major Star Wars thing. And it happened to be like a really well selling one because it was sold in Disney World, which helps everything. So
Sure.
yes, that was like lucky for me, and that led to an ongoing, which
Yeah.
was, it's so rare nowadays, for definitely non superstar writer to get that kind of thing.
That's changed. That's changed.
But and to work with one artist for most of it is incredible.
What is that like for you? As and Naomi, please let us know how you feel about being a writer that has a partner, or a different part of it. Like, you write, what you write is not necessarily what is the end result. There is someone else who's coloring it and drawing it, but like who's massaging what it is you put out down on paper. How does that work for you? How was different what for you was
I
that?
mean, it's great. I think the best thing I learned is to let the artist, the colorist, the letterer sort of like not step on their work,
Yeah.
in that, like, when I started, I have this like shelf of action figures that are trophies of characters I like writing. And I literally, the first few like issues of Bounty Hunters, as an example, I was trying to choreograph action scenes because I thought I was supposed to. And then I read a script by Charles Soule, and I saw like he basically was like, okay, we have 3 pages for this action sequence. This is kind of what I want to have. Like, here's some major beats, but just go have fun. And like, this is the sort of tone I'm looking for. And then the resulting thing was so amazing. And I was like, why am I trying to tell the visual experts how to, you know what I mean, how to do. And so that was like a realization, just because I didn't know, that there was a better way. And then since then, I try to do that as much as possible. It's not always possible because sometimes with deadlines and approvals, but as much as possible, I want the artist to carry because it is a visual medium. The artists and the colorist and the letterer to me are the most important parts of the band. Much like a rock band, the writers kind of like the lead singer, and they often get a lot of the glory, but like the band, the music is coming from the the artist and the colorist and the letterer. So like the everything you love about the tune is to me is coming from them. And so
Sure.
the chance, but I think there's something special about working with an artist over a longer period of time, because you can really get a chemistry going. All the artists I've worked with are pros, but like working with Paolo as an example for 32 issues,
Sure.
you get
To get somebody to work, to get a team to stay together that long is
it
tremendous.
makes such a difference. I mean, I've been lucky. I've worked with some incredible artists.
And you got Marco super early,
Marco
where
Cucchietta,
he
right
became
as he was
you
rising
can't
into
work with him
superstardom.
anymore.
But then they pulled him off of Old Man Hawkeye, like
Yeah.
after I think it was issue 10, because they put him on Daredevil with Chip
Yeah,
Zdarsky.
you're not allowed to work with him anymore. Forget it.
Yeah, no. So it was like, oh no, we had 2 issues left, but I got great, other artists working there. So it was, yeah, I've been lucky.
What was that like for you, Naomi? Like seeing the words you guys put together and the ideas, and letting that then seeing that translated into images.
It was really cool. I guess, kind of like my dad was saying, I was told, you know, the artist can't see inside your brain, so whatever you want, you have to write it all out very clearly in the script. And so I think I maybe followed that a little bit too literally, especially like my first time around. If you look at the script for Haunted Girl 1, the therapy scene, there's like a block of text about like half of the page long, and just like describing like what a therapy office looks like. Because I didn't know if like our artist Marco Lorenzana would know this kind of thing. And so, I went into perhaps a bit too much detail, and then like half a bazillion reference photos. Um, and maybe that makes more sense for like an environment that's a bit more specific. But I think I've learned definitely that like a lot of times the art doesn't like come out like what I was expecting. And that doesn't, and a lot of times it makes the story work so much better and like so much smoother. And so I guess kind of like my dad was saying, like, it like you do have to like let them kind of do their thing. You have to decide what's like really important for the storytelling, but the rest you can kind of like play with suggestions kind of thing. But the rest like you can like let them do, and like they also know how to like story tell, and you don't need to like, I guess, like micromanage, so to speak. But it was really cool, I guess, to see like it come together, like from the sketches to like the art, and then the color, and then like the lettering, because like we were there like every step along the way,
Mhm.
and to like, I guess, like comment, and that was like really cool to see it come together.
Yeah, it is a collaborative medium. It is a group of people in this industry who are, as you said earlier, people who care about each other. There's a lot of camaraderie there, and so, but to be able to see that and have that come together and be a part of that's the great part. And you get that a lot more on indie comics, as opposed to licensed things where you work with an editor who kind of takes things over there. Speaking of indie comics, What's this? You know, you know, Synergy. This comes out tomorrow. Is that right?
Yep.
So tell us about Dark Honor, Ethan.
So Dark Honor was a movie script that was written by K.S. Bruce and Brian DQ DQ Sorry, I stumbled over the name, but I've known them for a few years. I actually wrote an article about a previous movie they did called Manhattan Night. Awesome movie. I think it's either on Prime or Netflix. I can't remember, but it's very much a noirish movie. And they approached me because they finished their last film, this movie called Trust, literally the week that everything shut down. And we're all New Yorkers, and so we were at the epicenter of COVID in that, especially that really deadly, horrific time in 2020. I lost 2 friends, and also I was doing a lot of COVID reporting for NBC News at the time.
Sure.
So when they approached me and they told me their elevator pitch, and they were like, we think this could be a good comic book. Can you help us get this made? And I loved it because it was basically setting a crime story in New York City in those very early days of the pandemic. And so I was all in. I can't take credit for the story itself, the characters. They already had so much in place. My role in the band was 2 things. Like, number one, it was adapting it for a serialized comic book miniseries. And the other role in the band I had was, which actually, is something you have to do, changes the story.
No, it's not an insignificant role. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and then the other thing, which was basically being the comic book whisperer to sort of get this made. And my favorite part of this whole process was I got what I call the Ocean's 11 of artists, and Ocean's 11 of artists to do it. And so we have like Fico Asio for the first 2 issues, David Messina, Gabriel Guzman for the 4th issue, and the closer, Jamal Eigel, who's somebody I've wanted to work with for years. And so it just looks so good. Like this, I cannot tell you how wonderful the art is on this.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that is great. That's a fantastic.
Yeah. Raciel, the colorist, also just had the cinematic quality, and Jaime, who's was the letterer. He's also the letterer on Haunted Girls. I brought him in. And so, so it's just like, I can't take much credit beyond that, like sort of, but I'm really proud with the results, and the first issue comes out tomorrow. Definitely.
Yeah, that's great. Like, we've been talking about trying to get you guys on for a while, and like you were away and it worked out. So here you go.
It's actually worked because there's like several things coming together.
Yeah, there we go. What else we got going on? There's a new Star Wars book.
It's my first foray and not last with Dark Horse. Sorry for that tease. And that's Star Wars Hyperspace Stories Codebreaker. It's all ages, so it's going to be less dark than some of my other Star Wars stuff. And that one is Poe Dameron BB-8 story that's kind of like a fun romp set just before The Force Awakens and pegged to the 10th anniversary of that film. And then the other stuff I can't really talk about too much. I have some stuff in the works, including what has been announced is I'm doing something for Joe Quesada's new company, Amazing Comics, but exactly what I can't say. And
this is the new book that comes out tomorrow. Is it next week or something? When does this come
out?
No,
that one is a ways away. That's early in the process. Hyperspace Stories, the first issue is already out, and the second issue is out in
yes, it came out last month. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Next issue is I think July.
Great.
Or June. I can't remember, but there was like a 2-month gap.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to whatever you're doing with Joe Quesada's company.
Thank you. Yeah, there's some stuff that probably will be announced soon, but a couple of things I'm really excited about.
That is awesome. I want to come back before we get too late. I want to come back to the Zoop.gg Haunted Girl collection. You guys you're not quite at the funding level yet, but what's that process been like working with Zoop?
I mean, the great thing about them is I've never done crowdfunding before.
Right.
I don't think I'm the best salesman of my like I don't sell myself particularly well. I've never been great at that kind of thing. A lot of comic book writers sort of just go behind the computer and don't necessarily want to kind of put themselves out there too much. But the great thing about Zoop is they do so much hand holding, and they like take you through soup to nuts, like how it works, help you out. They do fulfillment. So it's really like, I'm enjoying the process. I guess it's a little stressful because you're like, what if we don't hit it? And the other thing too is like, it's not even just, we'll raise money for A Haunted Girl 2. The fact that we got all the permissions from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to do an official donation kind of thing, and they are sharing it on their page, and they were an organization that a few weeks ago they honored us as 2025 public education lifesaver award honorees. So we went to their gala, and it's like an anxiety dream because Jay Glazer, the NFL Network reporter, was like one of the other honorees, and like the founder of DBT therapy was like another one. So you have all this imposter syndrome being on that stage, and having to
you
give
guys
a
did
speech.
Great work. It was really
well.
important.
Thank you. And then you giving speeches in front of like Michael Strahan and Carson Daly, and and hundreds of like important people and stuff. So I feel like really want this to be something positive for them too, this Zoop campaign, so that hopefully we raise money that floats all the boats, everyone's happy. So that's like the sort of goal, and also I'm kind of excited to see this edition, which I love what Image did with the trade paperback. This is just like, oh my God, what if we could put everything we want to put in here into one volume?
Absolutely.
So
well, we're gonna keep talking about it. There's another 2 weeks to go.
Thank you.
I thank you guys for being here, for doing this. I was just wonderful to talk to you guys, to hear how you put this together, and where it's going, and where it came from, and I can't thank you enough for sharing this story with the world. I think that's something that we always need to be mindful of when we're talking to creators. Like, this is a story that you had that you didn't have to share. Nobody did, and thank you for doing it.
And I just I want to mention, because you were talking about Third Eye, where I saw
you.
Yeah,
you're coming down, right?
Not this time around, but I will eventually, because I love that place so much. But that day, a teacher approached me and said that he had bought multiple copies of issue 1 for at-risk students, and one girl had told him that she called the crisis hotline in the back of the book after reading the book. And so like that really resonates with me, because we don't know how many people reading the book benefited from it in that way, or it's like we hope that it moved the needle a little bit in a positive way, but you never know. And except for like that's the only way we know, is those individual anecdotes, and that really meant a lot to us. So
I mean, I've been, personally, I've been in situations where it's not far from me, and I appreciated the candor with which the book was written. So,
well, thank you for sharing your story, because I think all of that matters. Like, you'll inspire someone else to feel seen, and so we're all in it together.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll continue to talk about this book. We'll look forward to the sequel, and we'll have you back when that's ready to go.
Sounds great. Be happy to jump on anytime.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, and buy the rest of Ethan's stuff too.
All right, take care.
Bye. Thanks everybody for being here. This is tougher for me than normal, because I'm by myself, and I appreciate you guys being here. Make sure you stay tuned. We will update you in the next few days about what we're going to do next week. We'll probably be here. I'll be here. I'll get Mike to come back, and hopefully he's feeling better. And until then, stay safe out there and read some comics. They're good for you. And we'll see you later.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?